Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition is American Gladiators, brought to us by Gametec. While of course American Gladiators is based on the television show of the same name, the creators of the game took many liberties with the events from the game. The game features 6 total events, 5 of which you have to play up to 4 times in order to unlock the final event, but each one gets more difficult each time you go around. While the events are similar to what they are on the TV show, there's a lot of huge differences that you'll see when we get going. So here we go with American Gladiators for the NES. After all the credits are shown at the beginning of the game, you'll then actually come to the main menu where you can pick a 1 or 2 player game and then either put in a password or just start the game from level 1. We'll be starting of course on level 1 and starting with the joust. Now, on the show, of course, it was just one platform with 2 people jousting, with 1 contestant and 1 gladiator. However, during this version of the game, there's actually 4 gladiators for you to take out, and you actually have to do platforming between the different platforms in order to get to the next gladiator. Of course, falling down into the area below is a loss of a life, and you have very limited lives to get through everything, though there is ways to earn extras. In the jousting, you have 3 different types of attacks. A normal straight, you can low attack, or you can high attack. And mastering all 3, of course, is going to be your way of actually defeating each gladiator. The thing about it is, each gladiator you face has a certain type of pattern. They'll use only certain types of attacks. Sometimes they will use all 3, but that's really only on the hardest difficulty. For the most part, they'll use only 2 attacks, so you only have to learn how to counter those. After you defeat the 3rd gladiator, a flashing jousting stick will appear. If you're able to grab it and then use it on the final gladiator, it's a one-hit instant kill, and I highly recommend doing that, as you'll easily be able to defeat and end each of the levels. Once you complete an event, it then racks up the amount of time you have left, and you move on to the next event. Of course, you can pick the events in any order, but we're just going to go into the default order, so we'll be going over to the right side and picking the wall. The wall is probably the hardest of the normal levels, especially some of the later wall designs. This level is all about hand placement, as you use A and B to control the different arms of your gladiator, and all the different directions make the arms move in different ways. And if you accidentally run into solid objects, run into another gladiator, and that includes a gladiator just falling off of a higher ledge, like for example here, or you end up just missing a spot altogether and not have a hand on anything, you'll end up falling and losing a life. Getting used to this takes some time, so you'll have to practice a little bit, and thankfully the first level is pretty straightforward for the most part to get you used to a lot of the controls, though getting through some of the later levels, especially level 4 of the wall, is one of the most difficult challenges you'll be able to face in this game. One of the best ways for the other gladiators to just get rid of them is of course making them run into a solid object or into a blank space. Since they're coming directly for you either from below or above, you can either backtrack or try to hide in between different things to try to get those gladiators to fall down. Trying to get past them head on by just running past them is usually the worst strategy and will end up causing you usually to lose a life. You'll notice during this area you saw over on the right side there was a fist object, and we'll be getting it in the other versions of the wall. Basically, it gives you instant movement. You can just hold any direction, your guy will instantly start climbing wherever you want them to, so it really helps speed up some of the other wall segments. Of course, reaching the top of the wall, we rack up our time left and we move on to the next event, which is the human cannonball. Now, this one is one of the hardest ones to figure out exactly. Basically, of course, you have to jump from one platform to the other using the rope to swing across and then launching yourself at the gladiator on the opposite side. Now, easily at first you'll see that just running into them will instantly get rid of them. However, a gladiator will sometimes decide to block. What you'll have to do is usually wait for the swing of the rope to go back and forth a couple of times, and then launch yourself in order to actually stop the guy from blocking. For example, here, I swing back once, and then after I come back the second time, then I launch in order to get rid of him. During these segments, you can also find a fist object, mainly in the levels 2 through 4, in which case it's an instant knockdown even if the guy ends up blocking you. If you're able to get, of course, through all 4, we move on to the next level. Trust me, some of the later human cannonballs, even with a ton of practice, and even with luck sometimes on your side, you'll end up failing and just being bounced off one of those shields. Next up is by far the easiest event no matter what level you end up doing it on, and that is Powerball. During Powerball, you have 5 goals, and you have a ball that's on either side of the board, and it alternates each time you pick up the ball. If you run into a gladiator with the ball in your hand, of course they knock it away. Your goal is to pick up the ball and put it in each of the 5 goals. By doing so, you'll actually complete it, and you actually have to do it at least one time in order to complete the stage. However, if you're fast enough, you may be able to do it more than once, at least on level 1. By doing so also, you are granted an extra life, so it's another little bonus for actually completing the Powerball minigame. Since we actually were already able to do so, you can kind of now just spend the rest of the time doing whatever you wish. Practicing and learning how to maneuver around the gladiators isn't too difficult because they move in this kind of weird momentum pattern, and you actually can get them stuck on different objects, mainly the goals inside the center or on the bottoms of areas, and you'll just keep running into them over and over and over again, giving you an advantage to get past them. Once the time racks up, as long as you actually completed all the goals one time, you'll move on to the next level, and we'll go on to Assault. Assault was always one of my favorite games from the actual American Gladiators television show, having one character run up to hide behind a wall and then trying to launch at a target above a gladiator. Here, however, you pick up a missile launcher and have to fire a certain amount of missiles at the gladiator riding a vehicle while he fires at you. You can take a couple of hits before you end up losing a life during this segment, but you have to be careful and try to dodge as many of the projectiles from the gladiator as you can. You only get 3 missiles at first, and then you'll have to pick up another set of missiles farther up in the level. And the first guy only takes 3, while the second one takes 4, and it goes up 1 more each time, so the final gladiator takes 6 total hits to get rid of. Once you completed all the events in one level, you can see the gladiator changes it to level 2 difficulty, and you move back up to the beginning, and we'll start off with Joust once again. Of course, on the second go-round, things are definitely a little bit tougher. The second time in the jousting segment, you'll find that the guys have a little bit more moves to them. Actually, usually switching between 2 specific moves, and you just have to learn how to counter each one of them. Basically, if they're going for a high attack, you want to attack them low. One of the low attacks, you can normally attack straight on, and you can attack either high or low, usually high, for a straight on middle attack. It definitely takes some time and practice, and one thing is you don't want to keep mashing the attack button. What you want to do is attack once, wait a second or so, and then attack again. Because by doing so, you'll be able to hit them right when they're going for their attack, and you may be able to choreograph it so that when they're going for that upper attack, you'll be able to hit them with the low one. Of course, we once again hit the flashing jousting stick, and we move on to the wall level 2. The wall level 2, of course, is definitely more challenging as you have a lot more maneuvering you're going to have to do in order to get around the different objects and solid objects all around here. Start out by going up a little bit and then immediately go to the right so that you can knock the first gladiator off the wall. Start making your way in between the yellow circles on the wall and you'll be able to take out the next gladiator. As soon as you make it here, of course, we're going to backtrack a little bit, wait for them to fall, and then you actually have to move in a diagonal direction or just a little bit over to the left before you'll be able to keep traveling up. One of the hardest things to do in the wall segments is going diagonal, so practice this a little bit in certain areas because you're going to need to do it in a couple of the harder areas later on the other wall segments. When you make it to the top here, it interestingly freezes and you'll actually have to travel over to the right now going sideways. Here we're able to grab the fist item for the first time, and as you can see, it really speeds things up. Just be careful that you don't run into the gladiator because they can still knock you off the wall even with this upgrade. After a few seconds of using it though, it of course will go away and you'll have to continue your climb up or around the wall at least without actually having that. This area can be a little bit difficult, but if you time it right and move just to the left a little bit, you should be able to knock both of those gladiators off. Just get around the very last one and climb to the top of the wall to move on to the next level. Human Cannonball level 2 definitely changes things up a little bit. You'll notice that on certain ones, the platforms will move faster, the rope will move faster, and you'll get even ones with a big gap in between you and the gladiator you're trying to attack. Once again, wait a couple of times before you end up attacking here on this first one, and you should be able to knock him away. But it's still not guaranteed, and I don't have a perfect method for getting this done. This is just seemingly what was able to work for me on a few attempts while playing through the game. Thankfully, time your jump correctly on this one so you can grab the fist so you can instantly get past the third gladiator. If you grab the fist item on the fourth rope, there's going to be a gold trophy at the top of the screen. Climb up the rope while you're on it in order to grab it for an extra life. Then time your jump correctly so you can finally take out the last guy and move on. I usually find moving to the very bottom of the rope and then attacking him seem to work the best for me. This seems to be the case also with a couple other guys, attacking them from as far away as possible while using the rope to use your momentum to send you flying a very long distance. Especially on the very last gladiator of the Human Cannonball segment of level 4. Next up, of course, we have Powerball. Now, on this area, you can see the level, still the same exact design. They don't change it up for any of the different levels, but the gladiators are a little bit more aggressive. They move a little bit faster this time around. However, once again, this is still the easiest of the games to do, and you shouldn't have too much trouble being able to get the balls into the goals within the time limit. Next up, we move on to Assault Level 2. Now this time around, Laser is going to take 4 hits to actually get rid of him. So we pick up the first cannon and start launching the rockets at him when he gives us an opportunity to actually grab it. Do your best to try to hit him with all 3 of these rockets. Learning his maneuvering, it takes a little bit of time because he's kind of jerking back and forth left and right. Then, after you hit him with the 3 rockets, or use all 3 of them, move up, grab the second one, and launch it at him in order to get rid of him, and move on to Level 3 difficulty. The third level difficulty, Jousting, is actually, in my opinion, the hardest of the Jousting. I seemingly have more trouble with this one than I do even on level 4 Jousting. It's hard to give exact strategies, though there is a guide available that will tell you pretty much the exact attack patterns of each of the jousters. And even while using an exact guide and writing down what the exact patterns of the jousting are, they still seem to be a little bit sporadic at times and a little bit hard to judge. Basically, a lot of trial and error to actually get through, and if you're able to get through jousting, you should be able to get through all the other ones, because jousting is definitely the hardest and the most time consuming. Because sometimes it can be really difficult in the duels to actually knock the guys off the platforms. Of course, be sure to grab the glowing jousting stick so we can instantly take out the fourth guy here, and we move on to the wall level 3. The third wall definitely is tougher than the first or second one, but not nearly as bad as level 4 wall. Here we start by moving in between a couple of different blocks and working our way up. Eventually, when we make it up to this point, you'll start being chased from below. Try to get around this corner here so you can take out both of the gladiators that are chasing you before starting to head over to the right. Thankfully, just over here, we're able to grab the fist item and move all the way through a lot of the wall segment here until we're actually able to start going back up. Here you'll have to maneuver correctly, take out this first gladiator, and then you'll have to slowly climb up the center part here, and it can be a little bit difficult to do so. You'll have to maneuver your hands and bring them back close together while doing so to get around. Then be careful when you reach the top though, because a gladiator will start chasing you around. Try to move quickly over to the left and then climb up around the center block so you can get rid of her. Eventually you'll start moving back over to the left, in which case a gladiator will be chasing you down. As soon as you have the opening though, head down and you should be able to knock her off in the big diamond shape. Thankfully, just a little bit farther though, you get another one of those power fists and you can take that through a lot of the end of the area, getting almost to the very end before it runs out. Human Cannonball 3 is definitely where the game starts to become a little bit unfair. Here you have the big timing and openings you'll have to do in order to climb on the rope and swing across a very large gap in order to take out the gladiator on the other side. Getting used to the timing of the rope and when you should jump is going to be key in order to get through this. Thankfully, we can grab the fist item on the third one to take that guy out, and we get another free extra life on the fourth one as long as we picked up that fist. Once I have the item, I pretty much move to the very bottom and wait for a few swings before I attempt to take out the guy. Once he's taken care of, we move on to the next Powerball segment. Of course, Powerball is same old, same old. You'll have more aggressive gladiators this time. They're definitely faster during this segment, but they are just as stupid and clumsy and keep running into the goals themselves, so you can easily get the ball where you need it to be. The only thing is, though, you also have a little bit less time to do so, so that's what makes it a little bit more difficult, but you should be able to even fail twice on pickups and still be able to complete the segment. As you can see, we're able to get the one up, and we still have about 20 seconds or so to spare, so at that point we can just kind of run around and do whatever we wish. Now for Assault Level 3, of course, this guy now takes 5 hits. He's also a little bit faster, it seems, and fires a little bit more than he did on some of the other levels, though our strategies are pretty much the same. You can use the walls for protection in order to wait for him to go by, then run around the wall and grab the gun or power up, and then keep using it on him. It takes 5 hits, so getting that timing down is definitely the toughest part, but if you're able to do that, it shouldn't be too bad. You'll then move on to the hardest difficulty of the game, Level 4. Level 4 jousting is pretty difficult. Like I said, I always had more trouble with 3, but 4 is pretty deadly as well. Basically, knowing the exact strategies of the high and middle attacks here will definitely help you out. Don't even worry about doing a low attack, as you should be able to knock him off the platform by just doing high and medium attacks. On the second guy, we're going to once again be mixing it up though. We're going to be doing our straight attacks, and then he will from time to time do a top attack, so you'll have to hit him low. This guy always seems to give me the most trouble from the gladiator jousting in level 4, but eventually I'm able to knock him off with still 75 seconds left on the clock. The third guy, I pretty much have to mix all my attacks up together, focusing mainly on some highs and a little bit of lows here and there in order to knock this guy off the platform. The fourth guy is the hardest, but thankfully we'll be able to get the glowing gladiator stick in order to help us out and instantly defeat him. With jousting complete, we move on to the hardest thing in the entire game in my opinion, and that is Wall 4. Wall 4 drives me insane because of the exact arm placement you need to do in order to get through the early segments. Start off by heading straight up and take out the two gladiators that start chasing you. This is when things get difficult as you head over to the left and you have a very small area you have to climb up with very specific arm movements. You have to slowly climb here with the left and right arms, then bring them together on this platform and reach up diagonally in order to actually move up and across here. As you can see, I take my time because it's just so difficult, and one wrong arm placement will send you flying off. Right afterwards, you'll have to be very careful of a gladiator chasing you down. Just try to get to the very bottom of the area so that you can move left and right enough just to barely avoid getting hit by her. You'll then have to do some diagonal movements and work your way up to this center platform and start going over to the left. Here, climb up to the top bar. You can then use that to go diagonally down to work your way through the very bottom of this segment, and eventually finally making it into an open area. That's the toughest part of the level. If you're able to get through that, you'll be able to get through the rest of wall number 4. There is a decent amount of gladiators chasing you down, but thankfully we can also grab a fist item here in order to help us maneuver around some of these pretty quickly and get around a lot of the gladiators until we start heading over to the right. Over here, wait for this one last gladiator to fall to her demise, and then climb up the rest of the wall to complete the hardest segment, in my opinion, of the game. We now move on to Human Cannonball number 4. This is the game that ends up being very unfair. It's almost impossible to judge the final guy in this segment. It's just a lot of luck, and even though I have a strategy of hanging out at the bottom of the rope for that guy, it's still very difficult in order to time it correctly. The second guy, I'd like to hang out in the middle of the rope, swing once, and then on the second rebound, go after him. When the platform's at its lowest on the third guy, jump straight up in the air, you'll barely be able to grab the rope and get the fist item, in which case you can take out the third guy. On the fourth one, we'll once again collect ourselves the one up, and then basically I hang out in the middle and then jump to the very bottom of the rope before I end up attempting to make my jump at the guy. Getting the exact timing of this is pretty difficult. I don't know if it has any real merit of what actually happens with this guy, but this is just seemingly what was able to work for me, and I was able to get past it on more than one occasion. Thankfully, the next segment, a lot easier. We move on to Powerball number 4. We only have 45 seconds on the clock, and seemingly one of the gladiators is stuck inside of one of the goals, so that definitely helps us out for a little bit. It shouldn't take us long, and even after completing our first round, we still have about 15 seconds or so on the clock to spare, in which case we could put a couple more balls and goals if we want to. Now, assault number 4 has you having to hit the guy 4 times. He fires a ton of bullets down at you. What you'll want to do is when you time up your shots correctly, make sure that when he gets directly over you that you don't just stand there and let the bombs end up hitting you still when he fires them out. Keep throwing those missiles up straight at him, and after your 6th and final hit to him, you'll defeat him and complete all the segments of the game. Now we move on to the final actual level, and that is of course the Eliminator, which of course was the ending to the actual game show, and here is vastly different. Here is a very tough platforming area. You have all these giant balls flying up at you and they knock you back, and if they knock you back of course into a pit, you lose a life. The screen's also scrolling very slowly. If you go off screen just a tiny bit, you'll lose a life that way. You have to make sure that you don't move too far ahead, because when you move up, of course the screen will always scroll a little bit quicker. Getting used to also the jumping of the game takes a little bit of time, though you have a little bit of practice with the platforming and the jousting. After a bunch of the platforming, you'll then move on to one of the handlebars. Keep scrolling across over to the left or right, and thankfully you can move backwards during this segment, but of course if one of the balls hits you here, it's an instant death. When you make it over to the right, you now have conveyor belts, and getting the timing on these can be a little bit difficult as well. Be careful not to go all the way up on the diagonal up conveyor belts so the screen doesn't scroll over too far to the right and cause you to lose a life when you have to backtrack a little bit over to the left. Be careful of this last jump here to the final conveyor belt, and then jump again to the handlebars and moving them across the area again. At the end of this segment gets to be the most difficult part of the Eliminator because it's all timing. What you're going to have to do is you're moving on these zip lines and they're moving down quickly. You have to time your release properly on the zip line so that you grab the next zip line while moving down. Each of the zip lines moves at a different pace, and there's a different amount of length you need on each one. It doesn't take too much practice, and you can kind of guess when the next one's going to be, but if you get too cocky with it, you may end up missing, especially the very final zip line if you jump off of it way too fast. After timing it and jumping through about 7 or so of the zip lines, you land on the platform below and you can enjoy the ending to American Gladiators. So there you go, there's the ending to American Gladiators. You have your congratulations, your final score, and then it gives you a password, so I guess you can continue on, though I don't think it actually gets any more difficult at that point. It just gives you the password to go, I think, instantly to level 4. But anyway guys, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.